Morning, everyone. I've had quite a few questions about why I think that getting children and grandchildren is so important. And I wanted to take just probably about 2 minutes and address that. I think it came up because I have lots of, if you've ever been in an appointment with me, I talk about how much coverage I have on my children. And that is really important to me. And if you've also sat down with me, you know that I had a child die. And through that, I learned that a lot of people use insurance as a way to replace income for themselves. So for instance, if I die, it's important that I have enough income, enough insurance there to replace income to make sure my kids go to college, all that. It's kind of dark in here. Let's turn on some light. Yay, a lot better. So, but what people don't realize is that when a child dies, they may not have had income that needs to be taken care of. And of course, there are all the unfortunate things we have to do with having a memorial and a funeral. But the expenses associated with that are minimal compared to the loss of income for the parents and loved ones that inevitably spend a certain amount of time depressed, and which is what happened to me. I had a lot of lost income. It had a very devastating financial impact on my family. And so though the child may not have had income that needs to be replaced, there needs to be income replacement for the parents so that they can have that time to grieve, whether they need to take the whole family on a vacation to get away. Maybe it doesn't hit them right away. Maybe 6 months later, because some people respond by throwing themselves into work. So maybe 6 months later, they're burnt out and they realize, okay, it's time for me to actually process this, and then they need to take some time off. But I say that it's very important to get coverage for children for if they die while they're very young, because the parents and their caregivers are going to need to take time off. The number two reason that it's important to get coverage for children is because of their future needs. So for instance, my 11-year-old, perfect health, nothing wrong, very thankful for that, but anything can happen. What if she gets diagnosed with leukemia or even diabetes at a very young age? That's going to affect her insurability for later. So I want to make sure and have coverage on her now while she's healthy, so that when she's in her 20s or 30s and needs more insurance, because if she dies at that time, she'll likely have children depending on her. Well, if I make sure and have coverage in place at that time for them, or right now, on down the road, they're not going to have to worry about being uninsurable. So today I just wrote a policy on my 18-year-old because they're now eligible for more coverage, and I know what can happen. And maybe they'll take over the payments on that later on. We don't know. But I believe it's important to get that coverage on her now while she's healthy, less expensive, because 10, 20 years from now, younger people don't always think about, when they have young children, about how important life insurance is. Well, I know how important that life insurance is for them to have, and so I put that in place. Another thing that's used that I don't want to really get into on this call is that insurance is also used as a tool for planning for future expenses. So there is a way to create college plans and that set aside money that can grow tax-free. That can be used for college planning or planning for a wedding. That's the great thing about it, is you can determine what to use for it. So that's another reason that I've used planning for my children for that as well. And that's something we can go into at another time, but that is a use for getting kids covered. And so some of the ways that people get coverage for their children, and where grandparents, if you're listening to this, you can fill that need in a very special way. On a lot of policies for older people, or even people with some health problems, you can have a child or grandchild rider on that policy that no matter the health of the child, they will get coverage. So I see this a lot with families where they have a child in their family, a grandchild that maybe they're battling cancer. They're 2 years old or 6 years old. They're battling cancer, and it's very serious. They can't get coverage for the kids. The family has spent so much money fighting the cancer that they don't really have the resources now, that if the child dies, it's going to be a major strain on everyone to make sure that a suitable memorial is provided for that child. Well, you can add them as a rider to your policy, and they're guaranteed to be insured. That's a very special way that grandparents especially can contribute. Another way is that there are child and grandchild riders to your policies that you can add that will ask some health questions. But that's a way that you can get them covered, and as the child ages, they can then go on and get their own policy, break off from your policy, and no longer be a rider. And then there are, of course, you probably heard a lot about Gerber grow-up plans. There are Gerber grow-up plans, Mutual of Omaha has plans, other companies have plans that you can have a standalone policy. Mine for my kids that I have for a policy, I don't have the Gerber plan. I have the Mutual of Omaha Children's Whole Life Plan. That is a guaranteed insurability rider. So what that means is when they're turn 30, 33, 36, and 39, they can up their coverage at those years, and they don't have to requalify. So no matter what has happened to their health, they are guaranteed to be able to up their coverage. So that's very short synopsis of a 5-minute rundown on why getting insurance is important to cover kids and the different ways that you can do that. There you go.